In 1821, the Mexican authorities decided to allow English settlers access into one of their territories, a place called Texas. It wasn't out of the goodness of their heart, don't worry. They believed that this was in their best interest. They wanted the foreigners to come and cultivate the lands that their own Spanish settlers didn't want, so that they could benefit from the extra taxes the cotton industry and the cattle ranching would produce. It seemed like a friendly and mutually advantageous arrangement, but, well, let's just say that Mexico got more than it bargained for. Hi, my name is Sebastian, and you're watching Mistakes That Changed the World. The fact that Mexico allowed outsiders settle their own lands is already something to point out because historically they typically had a no-foreigner policy. But in this particular case, the authorities didn't see any harm in letting the Englishmen populate some remote areas. Besides, this attitude wasn't completely new. In 1790, English-speaking migrants moved into Upper Louisiana, then owned by the Spanish, in search for a new, better life, while the Spaniards were seeking people who could manage the Comanche and Kiowa natives. These newcomers had to meet three basic conditions: be Catholic, be hardworking, and be willing to become Spanish citizens. After 1821, when Mexico gained independence from Spain, the new government adopted the same policy. Unfortunately for the Mexicans, the plan worked very well. People from the English-speaking United States were attracted by the cheap lands of Texas and the promise for a much better future. By this time in the US, you had to pay a fortune for a small piece of land. Prices per acre hovered around $1.25, which is about $33 today adjusted for inflation. Furthermore, in most cases, the minimum viable area was 8 acres. But in Mexican Texas, you could buy your own land for 4 cents, or $1.30 in today's money. And as a bonus, the head of the family, be it a male or a female, could claim as much as 4,605 acres, and they could pay it off in as many as 6 years. As good as this deal sounds, it wasn't the only thing that attracted new settlers to Texas. Many of these new migrants faced financial difficulties at home, either due to bank executions or some debilitating debts caused by crop failures. But since there were no extradition laws between Mexico and the United States, people could escape their creditors simply by moving and settling into their neighbors' territory. Like the migrants in previously Spanish-held territories, the new Texas migrants had to become Catholics and take an oath of allegiance to Mexico. And for most, it seemed like a small price to pay for a fresh start. One player in this game was Moses Austin, an American businessman and pioneer who recognized the huge potential to make money from impresario grants. An impresario was a person who had been granted the right to settle on land in exchange for recruiting and taking responsibility for settling the eastern areas of Coahuila y Tejas, the official name for Mexican Texas. He planned to charge each migrant 12 cents per acre and use the profit to replenish his family's funds. He received permission from the Spanish government to bring 300 families to Texas. Unfortunately for him, Austin died before he could even start the business, so his son, Stephen F. Austin, inherited the contract. After hurtling through the long chain of the bureaucratic process, Austin had the legal permission to bring families over the border. However, almost immediately problems arose. Texas underwent a change in government as Mexico gained independence from Spain in 1821. The former Spanish territories became Mexican, and colonists now had to deal with a completely new government. And this new government did not continue all the previous policies. For example, the African slaves trade had been banned, which posed problems for white settlers in Texas who had been accustomed to profiting from African slaves. They did find a loophole, though. They were allowed to bring their family slaves to Texas and buy and sell them there. This practice continued for years until it was also eventually banned. When rumors spread that the slaves were to be freed entirely, colonists took precautions by having their illiterate slaves sign labor contracts for 90 years. This way, they no longer had to worry about any such nonsense like emancipation. And indeed, in 1829, President Vicente Ramón Guerrero finally emancipated the slaves, but Austin appealed to his Mexican friends with political connections and obtained an exemption for his colonists. His reward for his stance on slavery came in the form of a financial impasse. Impresarios didn't actually own the land for which they received subsidies, and as a result couldn't profit from selling it. So the plan to tax colonists 12 cents per acre of land went out the window. Nevertheless, there was another way to make money. The marginal benefits of an impresario came with a bonus of 23,000 acres for every 100 migrant families. By 1834, toward the end of the impresario era, Austin had brought 996 families and received a bonus of 197,000 acres of land. Since the reward land was legally his, he could sell it to the highest bidder. Austin wasn't the only impresario in Texas. Many others had come, but they hadn't shown a willingness to respect the restrictions of Mexican authorities. You know the saying, give a man an inch and he'll take a mile? Well, the English-speaking settlers didn't just take a mile. They in fact treated Mexicans as foreigners in their own country. They used any excuse to provoke the Mexican government and create problems. From time to time, though, they did cooperate when it suited them. For instance, Austin even sent an armed group to help Mexicans eliminate a rebellious impresario. Regardless, the Mexican government became increasingly wary of the growing number of American migrants settling into what was still Coahuila y Texas. Thus, in 1830, a law was passed that prohibited any further Anglophone immigration. Furthermore, from now on, these colonists were to be taxed heavily. The intent was to stop the influx of immigrants and to convince those who were already there to leave. Throughout the state, though, protests broke out. Austin, who usually allied himself with the Mexicans whenever such hostilities arose, was this time arrested near Ciudad de Mexico. He was still trying to convince the newly appointed general, Antonio López de Santa Anna, to reopen the borders and reduce taxes. But instead, he spent the next year in prison for inciting rebellion. Meanwhile, Santa Anna proved to be a vengeful despot who clashed with almost everyone in Texas, regardless of their origin. When Stephen Austin returned to Texas in 1835, he found the state on the brink of revolt. Although in the past he had temporarily allied with Mexican authorities, the years spent in prison clarified his priorities. The largest landowners gathered and elected Austin as their leader, and after several battles against Mexican rulers, Anglophone colonists ultimately won their independence in the Battle of San Jacinto in 1836, and thus Mexico had lost one of its profitable provinces and the independent country of Texas was born. You could say that they lost it because most of its inhabitants weren't loyal to that country. Even though the locals protested against Santa Anna's restrictions on freedoms and high taxes, without the American colonists, the province wouldn't have had much chance of separating. So, perhaps instead of paying Anglophones to settle in Texas, the Mexican government should have offered better incentives to their own people. It was a mistake that cost Mexico the territory of Texas and drew the attention of the United States to the other northern territories of the nation. I think it's safe to say that the world would be very different today if Texas was still part of Mexico. I hope this video was interesting enough to have inspired you to look into it further on your own. If you liked it, leave a like and subscribe. You can leave your comments downstairs, and you can also check out my Patreon page if you want to support me. I do hope to see you next time. Bye.